Hi everybody, my name is Sam Pedro. I just finished reading a really interesting book that I want to talk about today. That book was Sea People, The Puzzle of Polynesia, which was written by Christina Thompson. And yeah, in this video, I just want to briefly summarize the book, kind of just share some of my thoughts and my takeaways. The book was published in 2019, so a pretty recent book. And so the purpose of this book is to answer a few questions. And those questions are, who are the Polynesians? Where did they come from? And how did they go about populating this huge, vast region of the world, which is the Polynesian Triangle? And so the Polynesian Triangle, it stretches from Hawaii up at the north to New Zealand and all the way east to Easter Island. And it covers some 10 million square miles, which is just a crazy amount of the Earth's surface. And there's some 1,000 islands within this Polynesian Triangle. And for 3 centuries, scientists and researchers and explorers have been trying to answer this question of who are the Polynesians, where did they come from, and how did they get from island to island in over a 10 million square mile area. To tell this story, Thompson focuses on kind of more of the European interaction with the Polynesians, and so she starts with Captain James Cook and his expeditions where he started discovering these islands in the Polynesian Triangle. And right away, those big questions began to be asked. And the reason why is as they were discovering these islands, the common similarities between the people and the culture and the language started becoming apparent. And so they realized that the Polynesian people must have descended or been one people at one time. And that's why there's these similarities that travel thousands and thousands of miles away from each other and on these different islands. And so around 300 years ago, that's when these questions started being asked. She continues to walk through history as we learned more about who the Polynesians were and where they came from. And that's kind of about 2/3 of the book. And let me just interject and say that I thought this book was phenomenal from a writing and a layout point of view. This is obviously very scientific at times, but it never feels that way. It's more integrated into a story, and it just flows so well. And so I was really impressed with that. I thought Thompson did such a great job at writing and bringing these big ideas into a comprehensive and cohesive story. The last third of the book focuses more on who the Polynesians say that they are. And so it starts recounting their oral traditions and their histories and their culture. And this was my favorite part of the book, learning more about the people of Polynesia. And so it does highlight a few of the islands, such as the Maori people and the Samoans and the Tongans and Hawaiians, and kind of goes into their beliefs. The climax of the book is when she recounts in the 1970s when a group of Polynesians, I believe they were in Hawaii, set out to see if they could actually make it from Hawaii to Tahiti in a kind of a traditional canoe and without any Western navigation systems, so they'd be going entirely off of the stars. And they found someone who was skilled in being able to read the stars. And so they flew him to Hawaii, and they made off in this canoe, and they made it 2,500 miles. And this kind of set off this explosion of more interest in the people of Polynesia and how they were able to navigate from island to island and bring their people and their culture to these islands. And it was just a really fascinating read to think about that. Since the 1970s, they have continued this tradition, and I believe they've made it even across the entire world in these traditional canoes using traditional methods, kind of just to show that the Polynesians were able to do that. As far as who the Polynesians are, right now I think the common consensus is that all of them descended from a people known as the Lapita people, who potentially were in Taiwan or kind of Micronesia and started migrating eastward into these islands. Thompson herself, her spouse is Maori, and so her children have Maori blood in them as well. And so she kind of weaves that into the story as well, and kind of sets the stage for it became so different studying these questions about who Polynesians were when her children, are descended from these grand people. And I do want to say, I do think the book does a really good job at not making the Polynesians seem, I guess, hollow, even though it takes this European-centric view of, these explorers finding these inhabitants and have since, been westernized, the people of these islands. I think it really does a good job at explaining their culture and really giving them a big voice. And I kind of felt like that was a common thread throughout the book. So I really appreciate that. And I know in this review, I've been using Polynesian and not so much the specific people, but the book does go into more detail about specific islands and their cultures and how they differed. So that was my quick summary and review. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was so interesting. And again, I'll highlight Thompson's writing. I think she's a phenomenal writer and just laid out the story so well. It was captivating from beginning to end. I learned so much about the Pacific region and also the Polynesians, and I really loved every minute of it. So I recommend this book to everybody. Go check out Sea People, the Puzzle of Polynesia. And yeah, let me know if you've read this book below in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.